Hi there, welcome to another presentation of the Globe Sound Healing Conference. Today we have Jonathon Quentin. Hi, Jonathon.
Hi, David.
Cool. Welcome. Jonathon Quentin was born and raised in provincial New Zealand, but has spent much of his life overseas. His interest in sacred geometry began as a child, enthralled with the patterns in nature. His international travels were focused on visiting ancient sites around the world. He lived in the Middle East for several years, working for the United Nations, and during that period he was stationed throughout Israel, Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, and Egypt, providing many opportunities to visit ancient monuments, relics. He was greatly influenced by how much the ancient civilizations were aware of universal law and natural order, which they expressed through their respective architectures, artwork, and in the teachings of their mystery schools. Sacred geometry was an important element in many of these schools. Often the goal was for the student to transition from the state of Maya, illusion, to the state of Samadhi, enlightenment, a process sometimes referred to as the journey home. For the past 35 years, Jonathon has been teaching sacred geometry as a tool to higher consciousness. I would say the artwork and animation that you've done is some of the coolest I've seen out there. I just love it.
Thank you, David.
So what have you been up to lately?
Well, I'm here in New Zealand, and until recently, we led a relatively free existence, almost like there's no pandemic. I mean, that all changed overnight, and we went into lockdown. And in Auckland, which is the main part of New Zealand, we've been in lockdown for a while, and it's extremely limited what an unvaxxed person can do here, because a very strong drive to get everyone vaxxed, herd immunity, that kind of stuff. And it's put a lot of pressure on the people who prefer not to have that. Mm-hmm. And anyway, we don't have a lot. We can go to food stores, we can go to pharmacy and treat medical care, medical treatment, and that's about it. And so my world now is turning more into the cyber world. And as an example, what's happening between us now, the old way for me, pre-pandemic, I would go on international speaking tours and go on stage and have, a certain audience, and then on to the next, venue. Mm-hmm. And reach the finite number of people that way. This way is far better. We should have done this a long time ago.
It works so well with
so much time and expense and so many other things.
Mm-hmm. And it works so well with what you're doing as well, right? So you must have just gone back into creative mode though when everything shut down, huh?
Oh, I did, and especially around, well, actually exactly August the 8th, when the Lion's Gate opened, mm-hmm. and the planetary energies, started doing their things. I felt a huge wave, tsunami-like wave of inspiration and creativity. And for 21 days, I just worked around the clock, basically, bringing together over 3 decades of research and development and experience and contemplation, and packing it into a few minutes, into about 15 to 20 minutes in pictures. Cool. And I did it, and I will be including that, in the presentation towards the end, and in the cosmography section. Mm-hmm. And that's where I've been. Cosmography, that's my passion. Cosmography is the language of light, but specifically the language of shape, pattern, form, and motion, mm-hmm. and certain things like that, the alphabet of creation. And there's all different ways of experiencing it. Mm-hmm. And sacred geometry's power lies with what goes on inside the mind of the viewer, of the experiencer of this. No two people will have the same experience because there's all these different filters the information has to go through before it gets through to the brain. And it's, you know, affected or secluded or in different ways according to that. But it is what it is. Geometry stands there for what it is, whatever titles, whatever words, whatever meanings, whatever reactions we have to it, it is what it is. And primarily, in my understanding, is algorithms emanating from the universal mind. And it's telling us all about these states like balance and harmony, and all of the mathematical information is there that we see played out in nature through the self-organizing forces.
Cool, cool. Before you get started, I've got the big question. If you had all the money in the world, how would you help people on the planet?
Education. Yeah, I'd provide the best education facilities that were available to everyone, that would provide people with the skills and would be tailored to, you know, each region, which would be different depending upon, you know, what their skill set was and their capability and their resources and that. And train, educate people how to feed themselves and their community.
I would get you, oh, nice. I would also get you tied into the whole program we're doing for the children, right? Because we already have a whole sacred geometry section for the kids from 3 months up to 18 years. We've got 500 exercises already, and it would be great to expand those because, I mean, to get the kids into it from the beginning, I mean, it's so perfect for them, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. I love doing it for the kids. I used to in the old days. I used to give school assemblies when I had all my models, my geometric models painted in fluorescent paint, and I'd hang them on fishing line and spin them in the dark under a fluorescent light, and these glowing platonic solids just hovering in space because I was dressed in black backdrop and darkness, and all you could see are these, you know, spinning geometric forms.
Wow.
And the kids went wild, and the younger kids especially, you know, the preschool and early school ages were just they were so passionate by it, and then they'd jump on the chairs and dance and clap and stomp and really express their excitement with the children. So yes, I love sharing sacred geometry with children.
Cool. Okay, so go ahead and begin. Tell us about your presentation and go for it. I can't wait.
Okay, I will share screen. So it starts with number, specifically the relationship between number, because numbers are elements, numbers are ordering principles. And Pythagoras taught that everything is organized by number, and that an integral order can be experienced through the harmonic relationship between numbers. When certain numbers or number combinations are applied to certain mathematical procedures, the results can be described as numerically harmonious. Number is the most elementary mode of a universal language of number, shape, pattern, and form. Numbers can represent many different things, including frequency, angles, and angular relationships. they can represent the coordinates of length, shape, pattern, form, space, and time. Number is the organizing principle in music, where the relationship of number is measured in time. It is the organizing principle in geometry, where the relationship of number is measured in space. Everything can be reduced to the relationship of number. There's a very special number, unique from all numbers. It's 1.618, the golden number. And just below it, the golden formula, A plus B equals C, is similar to B plus C equals D. You can take any two numbers at random, and if you applied them to the golden formula, then the numbers would work their way towards, as you will see, towards 1.618, let's say. And each letter represents something, can represent something, and here is used to represent the past, present, future, and continuation. So in addition to representing the function, each letter can also represent a number. Now we only need two numbers to begin the process, because the other two can be deduced from the first two. Whatever number is chosen, the lower number, whatever two numbers are chosen, the lower number represents the past, the higher number represents the present. So chosen here are 9 and 15. So let's apply it to the golden formula. A is 9, B is 15. Adding past and present creates future, 24. Is similar to A plus B equals C, is similar to B, which we know now is 15. We know C is 24, and now we know D is 39. And this produces a series, a progression of numbers by following this formula. 15 and 24 are twice there, we don't need them twice. It produces this series, progressive series, made from adding the past to the present to make the future. And each number can be past, present, or future, depending which group of numbers it's relating to. The numbers are divided into pairs, and the lower numbers are divided into the higher numbers. And when we do that, then we see that certainly the numbers are working their way towards 1.618, the golden number. Choose two more, 4 and 7. Add the past to the present to make the future, continuing and so on to form the golden formula. And doing the same thing, dividing them into pairs, dividing the lower number into the higher number, and soon enough, it brings us towards 1.618. 27 and 144. Doing the same process, creating a new series of numbers, dividing lower into higher, so any two numbers, you can take any two numbers and apply it to the golden formula, and it's going to lead you to 1.618. Nature uses this formula. Out of the endless number of numbers, of number combinations available, only two can work for nature. One of them's not even a number. Nature can only start at 0 point. In this context, meaning the crossover point between the manifest and pre-manifest states. Philosophically, 0 can represent the cosmic womb, source of undifferentiated potential. And although 0 is not a number, it plays an essential role in the ordering of numbers, synthesizing the unmanifest with the manifest. It prefaces the first real number, 1, because 1 needs somewhere to have come from, philosophically speaking. And following the golden formula, adding the numbers, it produces what is known as the Fibonacci series. Starts at 0. From nothing comes something, the beginning. 1 of something. Add the past to the present. 0 plus 1 equals 1. And continue. And this is nature's series, the Fibonacci series we've called it. Each new number, the combination of the two before it. Every number works in compliance with the golden formula. And this is nature's primary organizing system, this distributory system. So here's some examples. Leaf distribution. Here's a template of these numbers showing that for every 5 revolutions around the stalk it will take, 8 leaves have appeared. There's a ratio of rotations around the stalk to number of leaves. And the template in this system is 5 rotations, 8 leaves. In other plants, it might be, a different set of Fibonacci numbers. Now, we have the archetype. The archetype upon which the structuring, the distributing system is based upon is now subjected to intrinsic and extrinsic forces. The intrinsic being the genetics, the extrinsic being all of these things listed here that are going to have an influence on how things work out. So leaf phyllotaxis are organized so that each leaf gets maximum sunlight and maximum rainfall. The numbers can be converted to organizing. Here on this pine cone, this species of pine cone, each bract belongs to clockwise and counterclockwise spiral. And in this species, counting the clockwise, 8 Fibonacci number and 13 counterclockwise, also Fibonacci. It forms a matrix, the pattern of proceedings. This Romanesque is an octave higher. 13 clockwise spirals, lines. 21 counterclockwise. The florets of a daisy. In this species, 13 and 21. Giant sunflower, 34 clockwise, 55 counterclockwise Fibonacci numbers. Then there's the Fibonacci scale, where the numbers are translated in length, forms a branching archetype, which again is subjected to the internal and external forces and is affected accordingly, so that there are no two plants or trees or anything exactly the same. Tributaries, dried riverbeds, mountain ranges, rivers, copper crystals, more rivers. From the sky, Fibonacci branching. And inside us, we are joined by proportional similarity. Now let's take a further look at the Fibonacci series and its abilities and properties and preponderances. And translate them to lengths. And look at how this series brings itself to the golden ratio. It starts off very slowly. If we look at these lambs and we divide them into two columns, and we divide the lower numbers into the higher numbers, it shows you on the right there how close or how far they are from 1.618, the golden number. Nature is similar. It gets off to a very sluggish start in the very beginning. It doesn't resemble much what it's going to mature into. So these are the first numbers beginning at 0. Let's move further along. Into a higher frequency. Things change quite significantly. And 1.618 is carried to 6 decimal places of precision. Do the same thing, dividing the higher numbers into the lower numbers. It moves much more quickly towards 1.618. Now, in the following examples, I want to make it very clear that we're looking at organic adaptations of geometric archetypes. There's 2 types of math here. There's precise and there's organic, which is not precise. As we've seen during the process of manifestation, precision gives way to organic growth, with the result that nothing in nature is individual or unique. It is unique.
Okay, we got rid of that fire alarm squeak. We're moving forward.
Here we go. So the purpose here is to indicate an underlying pattern. And so when we apply it to nature, it's not going to be perfect, but you can see the pattern emerging over and over again. The underlying key is most creatures, most organic forms, can be seen the relationship to the golden number, the golden ratio. But nowhere is it more exquisite than contained within the human form, as Da Vinci demonstrated in his Vitruvian Man, showed how every part of the human body related to another part of the human body according to the golden ratio. In philosophical geometry, the circle is often represented as the spiritual plane, and the square as the physical plane. And when we have a square and a circle containing the same area inside, and they are united, it's called squaring the circle. And It has a lot of sacred meaning. Anyway, because it's a spiritualization of force and matter, consciousness embedded in flesh and to consolidate it into flesh. In this diagram, there's two poses. Here, the arms are horizontal to the ground, the legs are straight together. The tips of the fingers and the soles of the feet touch upon the square. In the other pose, the circle, when the arms are extended out and the legs are extended out, the tips of the circle and heels of the feet touch upon the circle. And so this pose represents how we are united. We are heaven and earth combined. And the human form is the epitome of the evolution that has gone before us. And it's all related. Every part of us is related to the golden ratio. The DNA, 360-degree revolution, can be contained within the Fibonacci rectangle or the golden rectangle, a rectangle made of the Fibonacci numbers. The DNA represent, or they are the vehicle of continuity. In an invisible double helix. The spiral is based upon geometric proportions that exist pre-manifest. They exist via a priori. They are there in a state that we can't see. And so the vehicle of continuity, we think of the DNA, but it's not the elements. It's not the carbon, oxygen, hydrogen, and nitrogen that compose the DNA, because they have been changed all the time. The vehicle of continuity is this invisible spiral, geometrically, golden, proportionally structured. 13 angstroms across, 21 angstroms in length, Fibonacci numbers, right down to that level. It's Fibonacci, it's golden proportional. The cross-section of the tubular of the DNA are organized decagonally, or double pentagons. And the pentagon, as you will see, is golden proportional. So the length view of the DNA and the cross view of the tubular, the cross section, are both golden proportional. It's golden proportional in every respect. Now there's a higher order that exists with the Fibonacci series. So far we started at the beginning of the series and we moved a section up. But we've been looking at nature's geometry, we're going to look at universal geometry. We've been looking at the manifest, we're going to look at the pre-manifest. Quantitative, qualitative, organic, archetypal, symbiosis, fractalization, extrinsic, intrinsic forces. So we'll move along to 40 places from the beginning we'll go to. There at the end, that's 40 places from the beginning of the Fibonacci series. We'll select 7 of these numbers and organize them into lengths proportional to each other. And we'll measure them to 10 decimal places of precision. This is still the Fibonacci series, but it's adapting to the higher numbers, getting closer to the golden ratio. And at this level, well, all of them are precise to 10 decimal places. Well, it's more than that. The first one is precise to 10 decimal places. Every one of them after that, the further they go on, the closer they get, the more precise. Like the lower ones will be 12 to 13 times. 13 decimal places of precision. So here we have it, this level, the Fibonacci is a finely tuned, finely honed scale. A golden scale. And so we're going to take a look at a few adaptations of the golden scale. 1.618. Let's go beyond the veil, down the rabbit hole. We'll take a look at the Fibonacci like you don't see it in nature. As we have seen, the human form is an embodiment of golden proportion. The Fibonacci scale fits to the ideal human form. On the right, we have an example of 3 pentagrams, 2 nested within a larger third one. And okay, what about it? What's the relationship between them? Well, it's something that joins everything to everything else. Proportional similarity. We share not only with the creatures and the life forms in nature, we share with them through the golden ratio, but we also share through geometric cosmography, through cosmoscapes, star seeds are also embodied with the golden ratio, geometric cosmography. It makes triangles, it makes rectangles, it makes spirals that are found as a template of many things in nature. So, on the macrocosm to the microcosm, the same principles apply. The scale can change from microcosmic to macrocosm, but the ratios and the proportions remain constant. Let's follow it further. Let's go exploring cosmography. Cosmography is a universal language of shape, pattern, and form. And where does it begin? It begins with the circle. The circle contains undifferentiated, infinite potential within its boundaries, that it can be organized with geometries of perfection, all different patterns, different shapes, infinitely. And if that sounds astounding, it is, but it is also possible. If you know where to look, where do you begin? You begin with one, a center, a point of identity. Two, duality, polarity. The first relationship, pi, the relationship of the diameter to the circumference. Three, gives us our first structure with enclosure, the equilateral triangle. Four uniform divisions of the square of the circle gives us the square, the quadrilateral. 5 uniform divisions of the circle gives us the pentagon. And here we have the 3 primary shapes, the 3 primary divisions, uniform divisions of the circle, giving us the 3 shapes, which make secondary shapes. The double triangle makes the hexagram. And the hexagon. The square makes the octagon, the octagram. And the octagon, and the pentagon. The double pentagon makes the decagram. And the decagon. So this is the alphabet. This is the universal geometric alphabet that we can use to take us places. Transcendental geometry is the alignment to a higher order, and we can enter it with our consciousness. So let's take a look at it. Again, it starts with the circle, and again, the circle is geometrically organized. So we're taking the pentagon as an example, because all of the shapes are fractals, are mathematical programs. They contain mathematical processes such as interangular relationships, and vectors and vertices, and ratios and proportions, and square roots, and fractalization. Each of these shapes appearing in yellow, each of them is a fractal that can contain an infinite number of smaller geometric shapes, of similar shapes, and the shapes that appear between shapes, the rhomboids, narrowband rhomboid, broadband rhomboid. Each one of these is a fractal. We'll take a look at these three and see examples of how they can contain these geometric patterns and forms, and even the spaces between them. Here shown are just stars, but the spaces between them, we have triangles and rhomboids and pentagons and pentagrams and decagons and decagrams are all there in the spaces. Everything, every one of them golden proportioned, every one of them arranged around the center, every one of them connected to all the other shapes and united through proportional similarity and alignment to this higher order, this transcendental order. This is transcendental geometry. And these geometries, as I've said, are mathematical programs, are fractals, and you can look at every shape you see there. The stars and the shapes, the spaces in between, are all geometrically aligned and measure to the golden ratio one to another. And overall, as a group, everything relates to 1.618 visually. And think about what's happening visually. These geometries are imprinting on your mind. And these geometries are aligned to natural order, to a higher transcendental order. And they are impressing themselves upon your mind. So I want you to think about that, about what's happening, about the process of visualization, and what you see is not what you think you see. You think you see with your eyes. It's only partially true in a circumvent way. But you don't see with your eyes. You see with your mind. You think you see with your eyes. You don't. And if that sounds strange, think of dreams. Think of the dream state. Your eyes are closed, but you're dreaming of your pet turtle. And the imagery in your dream is similar, is the same as the turtle, the pet turtle. It's the same, but your eyes are closed. How come? Well, think about the process of looking at something. Here's your eye, and your eye is involved, so you're partially right without seeing with your eyes. But how it works is something's in your view, say a bluebird. You don't see the bluebird. How can you? There's 99.999% space. Anyway, that's not the reason. The reason is because it works differently. It works more like the dream state. It's closer to the dream state than thinking that you see with your eyes. So, okay, the bluebird is there and you think you see a bluebird. What happens is the source of light, the sun, let's say, shines upon it. The sun shines upon all. It reaches something, density, and the light is reflected off this density, but now it's carrying the information of the bluebird, its shape and form and the shading of colors and movement, if any. And so this reflected light carries, it's in your view, it carries through the cornea of your eyes, through the pupils, the iris, and is projected upon the lens in an inverted fashion. And further, this light is projected to the back of your eye, to the retina, a layer of a membrane of millions of light-sensitive nerve endings that respond to this light by pulsating and generating these neuroelectrical charges that pass along the optical nerve through the geniculate nucleus to the occipital lobe. And it's here where your brain reinterprets, translates this binary code that has arrived to it in the form of light language, and it reformats it. It recreates an image, a simulation of what is in your line of view. And that's where you see the bluebird in your mind, in your mind's eye. And your eyes are looking at the bluebird and saying, I see the bluebird, but yes, you do, but your mind, think of the dream state. So the point of this exercise is to think about your view, what's in your view. What if, instead of a bluebird, it's sacred geometry, transcendental geometry, and your mind is recreating, is simulating this geometry. And every image you see forms a neural pathway in the brain. And the more you look at it, the more you develop a relationship with this geometry. The more the energy that is represented by it. And remember, the power of the geometry is not in the screen. You're looking at this on your screen. That's pixelation. Here we have, looking at the primary shapes and the secondary shapes, again, as a fractal. Each one is a fractal. Each one is a universe unto itself. And each shape within it is a fractal that can have its own universe of geometry, smaller and smaller, through division, or larger and larger. This triangle can be part of a pattern of many, many triangles, and each one showing its own world inside it. So there is no limitation with geometry, only potential. And here it is for us during these trying times of turmoil all around us, and these restrictions and the challenges that they have upon us, and the people and their relationships, and their abilities and their health and well-being. Those who watch the mainstream media and the news are bombarded on a daily basis with images of destruction and violence and mayhem, and fear is the main force behind it, instilling fear and misinformation, fake news. This geometry, I call this starseed. This is the one I produced, this part I produced when during the Lion's Gate that initiated it. This is an antidote to that. Instead of all of the effects of negativity and fear mongering and uncertainty and angst and stress and all of that stuff tied into the turmoil all around us, this is an antidote. This can be a sanctuary, a visual sanctuary that you retreat to from time to time on a regular basis is good. And re-engage with these geometries. Develop your visual relationship with these geometries as they further enmesh themselves in your consciousness. And the real power of geometry is not on your screen at what you're looking at. That's only a reflection of what you are seeing, and you are seeing a reflection of that. But yours is mind manufactured. Yours is organic. Yours has consciousness. The screen, the pixels don't. They have obedience. They align themselves according to how the algorithms organize it to. But your mind arranges itself. And your mind, in the process of simulating these geometries, is also applying the mathematical processes that went into the construction, the design of these geometries. And this geometry, I showed at very early stages, the relationship between the human form, the Vitruvian man, and the animals and nature that came before him, but more precise and more finely featured in the human form as the epitome of everything gone before us, or geometrically aligned. And this is the same. It has the same, it's the similar, the proportional similarity that you have in you is what these geometries have in them. This transcendental geometry aligned to a higher order. And you are experiencing it in your cranium. That's where the power is. In your cranium, your consciousness, where your consciousness is viewing this and experiencing it in some form or other. And The more you do it, the more it's going to be there. Everything, even the star is used most of the time here. Even that star itself has its own ability of reflecting upon itself, aligning itself to this order. So the circle is the mother in transcendental geometry, and is able to accommodate the variation that exists between the progeny, the primary shapes, different circular systems, but something they all have in common is, of course, the golden ratio. But with the triangle and the hexagon, as well as the square and the octagon, they reach the geometric principle through extrapolation or subliminal division. Whereas with the pentagon, that's what we've been looking at mostly. Most of the time we saw some of the triangular and hexangular arrangements and their various abilities, but it's the pentagon beyond any other single shape that is most versatile and most visually expressive in its beauty of arrangement and alignment and perfection. It's the natural embodiment of the golden ratio. And so as we look at this, remember all the time, every second of this you are recording it. It's like a video recorder, but it's your subconscious recording it. And from a cellular level, you are recognizing various aspects of these universal laws and principles. And it's feeding you, it's nourishing your soul. As you hold the images in your consciousness, you're also including the frequencies, the harmonic frequencies that went into the production of their visual arrangement for your viewing. And it's all recorded. And we have universal archetypal geometries here, transcendental geometry, the Sri Yantra here, consisting of 3 or 4 upright larger triangles and 5 inverted, interlacing to make 43 smaller triangles, all of them related to the golden ratio as proved by Dr. Patrick Flanagan. Geometry is a visual form of music and has often been referred to as such, and can be used in an analogous way as a visual symphony where the shapes are the instruments and the color, the sounds that comes from them, and the changing colors and the motion, the sounds, the symphony from them, the celestial symphony, visual symphony in your mind's eye. And it's scripted by none other than, if you hadn't noticed by now, the same designer all the way through from the beginning to this. There's been the same signature print, the same fingerprint of the same designer from the atomic level to the molecules and cellular development. It's the same designer that did all of that is behind all of this. One of the questions about this that I find most intriguing is, who is the designer? And the answer actually is self-evident. It's found on everything in nature. Its fingerprint is upon everything, right from the subatomic level to the macrocosmic level. It's found the same over and over. So the answer to that is that the designer is the same designer that designed the bluebirds and the sunflowers and the seashells and the stars and the planets and this. This geometry is as natural a phenomenon as the pine cones and the seashells and everything else, but there's a distinction. It's natural phenomena, meaning that the principles are self-evident, the principles are omniscient, the principles are for anyone that seeks them out enough, the right person. But it's there. This is there for the consciousness that can reflect upon itself, human consciousness. But you must seek it out, or the geometer, an animator must, and that's been done. So here it is. It's there for you. It's from the provider, from the original provider, the original source, whatever that is, to the viewer, whatever that may mean. That's where this comes from. And this is an aspect not normally shown. We do see it here and there. The Islamic mosaics capture these laws and this beauty and these aesthetics and intricacies and alignments. And other cultures as well apply it to their religious iconography. I address it as a universal geometries, archetypal geometries, transcendental geometry, and don't affiliate it to any religion or culture or tradition or anything. I just present it as it is. And this is from someone who never finished high school and my entire years of education, if that's what you call it, I endured with undiagnosed dyslexia and Asperger's syndrome and ADD, and just never was able to fit in with the system. I left as soon as I could. I was raised in the Irish Catholic church, the tradition, and left that at the age of 16 when I was no longer compelled to be a part of it. And it's just been a journey for me. It's been a journey. Everything is self-taught that I've shown here. I teach myself in a way that only a dyslexic would understand, and from the ground up. And to me, when I first encountered this geometry, I was so taken by this geometry, by this beauty, that I just couldn't hold it to myself. I just had to show it. And here it is. This is the geometry that comes to us from source. These are the algorithms of the universal mind. They represent continuous, timeless, universal actions that align to a higher order and can only be known through geometry. And I think one of the most remarkable things about all of this, and the possibilities are endless. I think one of the greatest wonders about this is that it is all, everything you have seen was first contained, was birthed, was developed from inside the circle. Everything you're looking at, everything you've seen just now, the circle was the mother, was the provider. The results were the circle reflecting upon itself, dividing itself into these harmonic segments and alignments, where everything is perfectly connected to everything else and the greater whole. And so that's where it starts. Circle, cosmic womb, infinite potential, infinite possibilities.
Wow. So I feel like I've just seen the essence of God.
Wow.
Right? It's interesting that I talk about the hierarchy of vibration, which is frequencies, combinations of frequencies make up a timbre, combinations of timbres make up a chord or musical interval relationships, and then you add time and you now have flow. And smooth flow through the body and through the planet and through the universe is really the essence of health. It's
exactly.
what
flow. Yeah, flow says it all, really. It's in flow, or it's disrupted in one form or another.
And I've always thought the best example of smooth flow, the smoothest flow ever in the universe, is the Fibonacci curve. There's nothing smoother than the past plus the present equals the future.
Yeah.
Right? And it's interesting. So you got flow in this geometry, but then you got a second level of flow where you actually start moving and morphing and changing from one geometry to the other. There's a second level of flow there. It's interesting. In the book, I read Alice Bailey a lot, and in the channeling, they say, until we get to a point where there's a continuity of consciousness in our brain from all moments, then we're not going to be completely aware because we jump around. It's interesting when I take a look at my brain, it's like, yeah, I can be really focused and conscious for a while. And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, it just shifted. I missed that shift. I'm in another reality, right? And there's not this perfect continuity of consciousness. So when you do that Fibonacci curve of focus, then you become really grounded, really focused, and you see how it all fits together in the universe, and you are it.
Yeah. You're living it. You're living proof of it.
Right. Wow. Okay, so there's another thing I want to share with you that is really cool because we got a $100,000 grant to take our entire curriculum into a Montessori school, and one of our instructors named Ryan came up with this whole way of showing rhythm as a circle. And so he actually, we have these detailed exercises to do body percussion where we take the circle and divide it into two, and then they just do like ooh, ah, right? And then we divide it into three, and we do ooh, oh, and we do different consonants, and then we do 4 and 5 and 6 and 8, and then we take 8 and divide it into 3, 3, and 2. Right, on the circle, ooh, oh, and then we do body percussion, ooh, oh, right? And we go all the way up to 16, right? And then after doing this body percussion by using the circle as the nomenclature, they can do very detailed rhythms, right? After doing it for a few years, when they get old enough, we now say, look, if you connect the dots, especially 8, 10, and 12, and even exactly what you just showed, you have every geometry in the universe, and here's the meaning of those geometries that you've been tapping on and playing and doing body percussion to for years.
Yeah.
And it ties it all together. It's like it's like every geometry you just showed is an actual rhythm. Well, thank you for, oh my God, the amount of detailed work that you've put into this in your lifetime is just unbelievable. And I just honor, what you've done. It's really, really beautiful.
Thank you. Thanks.
This has been a presentation of New Earth One Network, your home for New Earth living. Visit newearth1.com.